For the proper development of a child, he or she needs a good home, food, education, healthcare, and the right to grow up in a peaceful, secure, and caring environment. However, not all children are fortunate enough.
Naitwa nani? Doli. Tanipatia doli niende nayo home. Kapatia mtoto wangu. Asanti. There are about 40,000 street children in Kenya and at least 1 million orphans. Unfortunately, they live on cold, hard pavements. Their stories are heart-wrenching, from drug addicts to rape victims and sometimes victims of torture. Hii ni white, hii ni black, na hii ni green. Ebu nionyeshe white ni gani? Good girl.
Shortly after the 2007-2008 post-election violence in Kenya, the streets of Gilgil were filled with children, some abandoned, others orphaned, while some were just lost and fending for themselves. Others were driven out of their homes by parents who could no longer support them. They suffered starvation, physical and sexual abuse at the hands of gangs on the streets. It is always the case that in every conflict, children become the victims and suffer the most.
Wow! Sawa.
The sight of these children suffering on the streets was too much for Mary Coulson, the founder of Restart Africa.
So it's all pink, white and blue for the children in honour. Gilgil was one of the most popular places for displaced people to come to. Yeah. We have no infrastructure whatsoever in Gilgil, and so it was a terrible plight for a very small, unstructured town. And we went out on the streets. Peter and I heard that there were people suffering there, particularly children, and we went out on the streets together. And we really had no choice but to start something that was actually going to help the children first and the people next. Yeah.
Having been in Kenya since 1967 as a teacher at Koelel Secondary School, Mary had developed a soft spot for Gilgil and its people. She found an abandoned building and rented it.
And we got 5 or 6 kids in. We scrubbed this place in Gilgil that we found that was better than the streets, one up from the streets. We scrubbed it with Dettol, and we put the 6 kids, the 5, 6 kids that we had in this really cramped, terrible place. But for the children, it was heaven, because they were sleeping on the streets and scavenging and lost.
The number of children grew drastically, and after several funds drives and donations, the children were moved into the new orphanage in late 2014.
Maybe if you could tell me how many children that you have here.
Do you want me to? I've got 112 children, because we took a little 3-year-old girl in today who was abandoned on the streets. Firstly, she was locked up for days on end. In fact, for weeks, without food, and then she was on the streets. And you know, when the little ones are on the streets, well, all of them, they get raped. And I just, for me, for a 3-year-old little girl, I just can't cope with it. So I sent my female social worker, and she rescued her today. So she's in now. Her name is Esther.
Restart now provides food, shelter, welfare and education to these vulnerable children. Most of them have suffered sexual abuse and deprivation. They all have significant emotional issues. It is not easy to rehabilitate such children, and it can take many months of love and care before these children can forget what they went through and are able to enjoy a more settled life in the Restart Center.
How do you get to know about these children's cases?
The child welfare officer will call us and tell us. My own social workers go on the streets. They're very active on the streets, and they look to see the children in need, the children that are not functioning properly, that can't cope. And the safe house, I have a good relationship with the lady that runs the safe house. and she lets me know if there's a child that she feels we should have, because the safe house is a safe house. It's not a home for children. It's a temporary place to go to. So we hear, and then we have to go through government, we have to go through child welfare. To get any child that we have to have their approval. But that's how we do it.
Restart Africa also runs local projects that help to fund and support the Restart Orphanage, as well as employing many local Gilgil residents. Najma Ismail, KTN News.